19th of September, 1952. The RMS Queen Elizabeth is 2 days out of New York. On board, Charlie Chaplin, wife Una, and their 4 young children. They're traveling to London for the premiere of his new film, Limelight. Chaplin has lived in America for 42 years and has never taken American citizenship. On this day, United States Attorney General James McGranary signs an order revoking Chaplin's re-entry permit, informing Chaplin while at sea. If Chaplin wants back into the country where he has built everything he owns, he will first have to submit to a hearing on his political views and his moral conduct. Chaplin's public statement is careful. I do not want to create any revolution. All I want to do is to create a few more films. His position hardens. He surrenders his re-entry permit voluntarily. Una returns to America to transfer his assets to European bank accounts and to close his studio on La Brea Avenue. The American chapter ends with her closing the door on her way out. In today's episode, we're going to delve into Charlie Chaplin's upbringing on the streets of South London to see how life invokes art. Chaplin's career emerged from the music halls of the poor streets of South London. The music halls, as with much in Britain, originated with the pub. Act 1, South London, 1889 to 1901. There's 2 things that surprised me about Charlie Chaplin. Number 1, I thought he was American. Number 2, I couldn't understand how someone with classic movie star looks did not emerge as your typical romantic lead. I got both my misdirections corrected once I dug into his background. It's shocking to me that someone could escape such a brutal upbringing on the streets of late Victorian London, travel the other side of the world for work, and become not only a global star in the early days of Hollywood, but a self-made man in the process. The choice of leading character, well, the answer to that is in the pubs, music halls, and those streets of South London that we will explore on today's episode. Our walking tour will cover roughly 2 miles of South London, Walworth, Kennington, Lambeth, and Camberwell, neighborhoods most people don't cover on their first or subsequent trips to London. This is the territory that made Charlie Chaplin. In the late 19th century, on Charles Booth's poverty maps, this area included heavy bands of poverty, streets marked very poor, and chronic want. We're going to walk the area in the order that it shaped Chaplin, broadly south to north through Kennington, finishing east into Camberwell. There are a handful of places that belong to the story, but not to the walk. Our story will go there without your feet having to follow. Before we get into the story, I just wanted to ask a favor of you. If you're enjoying this podcast, then please share it. Share a link to the show and share specific episodes with people that you think would appreciate it. Thanks for listening. It's 1889 and we're starting at East Street Market in Walworth. The market has been trading 6 days a week since the 1880s, and it's still pretty much recognizable as it once was. It's loud and dense, with stalls laid out end to end. Vendors work the crowd with the specific performative energy of people who understand that in a market, attention is money. The hustle is a form of theatre. Charles Spencer Chaplin was born on the 16th of April, 1889. The exact address is disputed. The historical record offers several possibilities in the Walworth area, but the official Chaplin estate biography places his birth on East Street. His father, Charles Chaplin Sr., was a comic singer on the South London Music Hall circuit, dressing in the character of an elegant swell. His mother, Hannah Hill, performed under the stage name Lily Harley. She was a singer and character comedian in the music halls. Both parents were genuinely talented. The 1891 census places Hannah as head of household at 94 Barlow Street, Walworth, with Sydney and 2-year-old Charlie. Charles Sr. was found on the same census, lodging nearby with fellow theatrical performers. The marriage was effectively over before Charlie could even walk steadily. It's 1892, and our next stop is 39 West Square. Chaplin's parents separated in 1892 when he was just 3 years old. Chaplin moved in with his mother and brother Sidney to this address. Hannah had begun a relationship with another music hall performer, Leo Dryden, bearing him a son, Wheeler. This was a stable, happy period in Charlie's young life. West Square is a Georgian square dating from 1791. Its terraced houses surrounding a communal garden. They all lived at 39 West Square until the relationship broke down and Dryden left with his son in 1893. Hannah's health declined quickly from here. Her voice began to fail. This prompted her son Charlie's first stage appearance. In 1894, when Hannah lost her voice mid-performance before a rowdy audience in Aldershot, the stage manager led 5-year-old Charlie on in her place. He sang a popular song, and when the audience threw coins onto the stage, he stopped to pick them up before continuing. That got a bigger laugh than the singing. He was 5 years old. The mechanics of performance and audience management were already running. (1895) and a 20-minute walk brings us to 164 York Road and the first recorded splitting of the family unit by institutional intervention. By June 1895, Hannah is suffering terrible headaches and a failing voice and is admitted to Lambeth Infirmary. 6-year-old Charlie is lodging with a family called Hodges at 164 York Road. Sidney is in the workhouse. By 1896, Charlie's father had stopped maintenance payments. Hannah, unable to work, cannot meet the payments on her sewing machine, and it gets repossessed. With no income, Hannah could no longer look after the children, and the choice was grim. (1896) brings us a brisk 25-minute walk to the site of the Lambeth Union Workhouse, off Renfrew Road in Kennington, and close to where the Imperial War Museum stands today. The workhouse building still stands. It's now the home of the Cinema Museum. By May of 1896, Hannah could no longer provide for the boys, and she admitted herself and both children to the Lambeth Union Workhouse. Within weeks, Charlie and Sidney were transferred to the Central London District School at Hanwell, a pauper school 12 miles west in what is now Ealing. They were transported there through the streets in a horse-drawn bakery van. At Hanwell, Sidney was separated from Charlie. The authorities selected older boys there for maritime training. In November 1896, aged 11, Sidney was transferred to the training ship Exmouth, moored off of Grays in Essex. This was an old warship repurposed to train pauper boys for sea service. He stayed 14 months, leaving in January 1898 with a certificate of proficiency in seamanship. The system that had separated the brothers had, in Sidney's case, also given him a trade. In his autobiography, Chaplin describes the day they entered the workhouse gates. He notes being separated from Hannah, the institutional uniform replacing their own clothes, and records with forensic precision and without self-pity. At some point during the boys' time at Hanwell, Hannah discharged herself from the workhouse to see her children. She spent a single day with them at Kennington Park, where they sat on a bench eating cherries and played catchball with a crumpled newspaper, and a visit to a coffee shop. Then they had to return, as if the day hadn't even happened. The park is a 10-minute walk from the workhouse on Renfrew Road. It still exists. It's a very ordinary green space in South London.
Into the blue, just a gesture, just a look.
We're at 1898, and I think we'll pause right here. There's a building on Westminster Bridge Road that you won't need to visit today. It's north of where we're heading, but it's long gone. It's the most important room in Charlie Chaplin's education, however. The Canterbury Music Hall. It was one of the first purpose-built music halls in all of London. It could hold 3,000 people, and Chaplin's estate tells us that he recalled seeing his father perform there. What the young Chaplin was watching in these early music hall days was the specific transaction with the audience, the slow burn, the gag delivered at exactly the right tempo, the geometry of a laugh, the mechanics of the moment an audience decides to grant attention, and the moment it decides to withdraw it. All skills that ultimately were transferable to silent film. Chaplin was watching his father work a room that owed him nothing. He was still only 9 years old. We've reached the period 1895 to 1898, a short distance north from the Cinema Museum, and we arrive at the Queen's Head pub at 71 Black Prince Road, SE11 6AB. The pub sadly is no longer there. The building is currently in use as the Queen's Head Cafe and Bistro. Charlie Chaplin's uncle was the landlord here, which means this was, for a stretch of the 1890s, something approximating a stable point in an otherwise chaotic childhood, a place with a family connection, a place where he was known. It's where Chaplin situated the first version of a story he would return to more than once. It is the origin of the Tramp's walk. A man called Rummy Binks worked here at the Queen's Head, taking care of the horses. Chaplin recalled watching him cross the road. He had a particular shuffle, a way of carrying a body that had been worn down and bent into shape by hard work and harder luck, misfitting clothing and large bulbous feet. As always, Charlie paid attention and filed it all away.
Ale soaked into the stage boards, I could hear the boots hitting the floor. A penny for a tumble, a pound for a grin.
September 1898, and a 9-minute walk north, and we're at 287 Kennington Road. A plaque marks the site today. Hannah is admitted to Cane Hill Mental Asylum. She had developed psychosis brought on by syphilis and malnutrition. The admission date, 15th September, 1898. The boys went for the first time to live with their estranged alcoholic father at 287 Kennington Road. The father was living there with his mistress Louise and their young son. Louise did not welcome the boys. It was she who eventually enrolled Charlie at Archbishop Temple Boys' School.
London was a throat full of rough dust. The shouting never seemed to end.
Fast forward to November 1898, and a 20-minute walk brings us to our next stop, 39 Methley Street in Kennington. Hannah is discharged from Cane Hill in November of 1898. The family reunited here, one room beside Haywood's Pickle Factory and a slaughterhouse on Kennington Lane. Act 2, The Train-In, 1898 to 1910. Before we continue the walk, we need to run the professional story alongside the domestic one. The two tracks cover the same years. They don't always point in the same direction, however. It's now the autumn of 1898, and while Charlie and Sydney were still shuttling between their father's house on Kennington Road and their mother's room in Methley Street, Charlie Chaplin's professional career began. Charles Chaplin Sr. used his professional connections to get his son the vacant place in a troupe that was known as the Lancashire Lads. Within just 8 weeks of rehearsal, a 9-year-old Charlie made his debut on Boxing Day 1898 at the Theatre Royal in Manchester in the pantomime Babes in the Wood. This is what Charles Sr. gave his son. No maintenance, no stability, but a professional connection. It was not enough, but it also was not nothing. At Christmas 1900, the Lancashire lads moved into a different kind of work. The troupe were engaged to play animals in the kitchen scene of the pantomime Cinderella at the new London Hippodrome. Charlie Chaplin was dressed as a cat. The British Film Institute notes that this was his first opportunity to make people laugh as a character rather than as a dancer. He had spent 2 years learning what a crowd looked like from the front of it. Now he was learning what it felt like to be the reason they laughed. April 1901, 6 minutes north from Methley Street brings us to 14 Chester Street, now Chester Way, in Kennington, 2 rooms above a barber shop on Chester Way. Sydney had taken a new berth, signing as an assistant steward and bandsman with the Union Castle Mail Steamship Company on the Cape run to South Africa. Hannah and Charlie moved in with what he'd left them. Orange crates covered in cretonne served as furniture. When Sydney's return was delayed, they would move again to Pownell Terrace. But for now, it was theirs. It's still April 1901, and we're walking 12 minutes north up to the Three Stags pub at 67 to 69 Kennington Road, SE1 7PZ. Situated directly opposite the Imperial War Museum, this pub was well known to Charlie Chaplin and his family. There's a small snug area called Chaplin's Bar in the pub today. It's a free house featuring beers from London breweries. It's also a gastropub, emphasizing free range and ethically sourced products. It has original cast iron pillars and a tiled splash around the bar counter. Chaplin wrote in his autobiography, "The Three Stags in the Kennington Road was not a place my father frequented, yet as I passed it one evening, an urge prompted me to peep inside to see if he was there. I opened the saloon door just a few inches, and there he was, sitting in the corner. He was about to leave, but his father's face lit up, and he beckoned Charlie in. Chaplin wrote that his father was never demonstrative. Chaplin Sr. looked very ill. His eyes were sunken, and his body had swollen to an enormous size. He rested one hand, Napoleon-like, in his waistcoat, as if to ease his difficult breathing. That evening, the father asked after Hannah and Sydney. Before Charlie left, his father took him in his arms and, for the first time, kissed him. Chaplin wrote, "That was the last time I saw him alive." Charles Chaplin Sr. died on 9th of May 1901 of liver cirrhosis at the age of 38. He had been working to the end, or at least trying to. Now we reach the period 1901 to 1903. Our walk takes us to a site that no longer exists, which is fitting because of what happened here. 3 Pownell Terrace was a garret in the roof, a few minutes from the Three Stags pub. The building was demolished in 1966 and is now part of the Ethelred estate. It was the last address at which Hannah, Charlie, and Sydney ever lived together under the same roof. In May 1903, Hannah's health failed completely. She was readmitted to Lambeth workhouse and transferred to Cane Hill Asylum. Charlie Chaplin was 14 years old. He walked his mother to the asylum himself. Charlie Chaplin then lived alone for several days, searching for food, occasionally sleeping rough, until Sydney returned from sea. Hannah was released from the asylum 8 months later. Her illness reoccurred in March 1905, and this time, sadly, it became permanent. That is the scene that's missing from every tourist map of Charlie Chaplin's London. Not the tramp, not the funny walk, but a 14-year-old walking his mother to an asylum and then walking the streets, alone, homeless. It's 1903 and we have a short walk to bring us to the Tommyfield pub at 11 Kennington Oval, SE11 6PT. It's formerly the White Hart pub. Part traditional London pub, part gastro, and part boutique hotel these days. It has guest accommodation of 6 bedrooms attached and a regular bill of comedy acts. It's located near the Oval Cricket Ground on the Georgian Cleaver Square, an 18th century garden square that dates specifically to 1789. It was the first in South London. Also nearby are the Garden Museum, housed in a former church on Lambeth Palace Road, the Imperial War Museum, and the Beefeater Gin Distillery in Montford Place. In Charlie's own words, I wandered through Lambeth Walk looking hungrily into cookshop windows. For hours I watched the quacks selling their wares. The distraction soothed me, and for a while I forgot my plight and hunger. He ended up on the steps at Kennington Cross, waiting, no money, no food. Sydney was away at sea, the house empty. Music drifted from the White Hart pub on the corner, now the Tommyfield pub. And the music stopped him in his tracks. He was 14 years old, and he'd just walked his mother to Cane Hill Asylum. Hungry, alone, sitting on a curb in the dark, a pub performance momentarily lifted him. He already knew entertainment was the way out. This was the night it became a conviction. By 1903, Chaplin had a speaking part, playing Billy the page boy in a touring production of Sherlock Holmes under H.A. Sainsbury. This was a small, yet speaking role across a full evening that taught him how to sustain a character over 2 hours. His brother Sidney had joined Fred Karno's prestigious comedy company in 1906, becoming one of their top performers by 1908. He lobbied Karno to hire his younger brother Charlie. Karno at first was reluctant, considering Charlie a pale, puny, sullen-looking youngster who looked much too shy to do any good in the theatre. Well, Charlie got a 2-week trial, and after a good impression on his first night at the London Coliseum, he was signed to a contract. He began playing minor parts, progressing to starring roles by 1909. And you know, Charlie's understudy, he was a certain Arthur Stanley Jefferson. We all know him as Stan Laurel, of Laurel and Hardy fame.
Why speak when the eyes do the heavy work? A lift of the brow tells the whole story. The camera turns like a steady heart. It is better to be a ghost than a man who has to scream to be heard.
It's 1908 and we have a 10-minute walk southeast from Kennington Road to 38 Southwell Road in Camberwell, formerly Vaughan Road. Karno's company rehearsal studio and production center was located there, and it was known as the Fun Factory. A commemorative blue plaque was unveiled there in 2012, a 5-story building that still stands, still in creative use, as Clockwork Studios. Dialogue had been banned from the music halls in an attempt to promote the theatre industry, but Karno circumvented the rule by training speechless actors to use exaggerated body language to portray their characters. These mime-based performances were systematic in a way most treated as entirely instinctive. Every sketch was structured with the precision of a mechanism. Entrance, setup, escalation, misdirection, release, exit. Nothing happened because it was funny in isolation. It happened because of where it fell in the sequence. What he was teaching at 38 Southwell Road in Camberwell was the grammar of silence, 6 years before silent moving pictures came along. Chaplin quickly rose to the lead role in one of the company's signature pieces, A Night in an English Music Hall. He played a drunk man in a theatre box who progressively, methodically destroys the performance happening on the stage below him. The character is prosperous, besotted, catastrophically well-intentioned, and entirely unable to understand the damage he's causing. The class dynamics of the man with money and no situational awareness versus the performers trying to keep their livelihood intact were not lost on a boy from Walworth. This is not a character invented in a rehearsal room. It's a character assembled from years of watching both sides of that specific relationship.
Then the water stretched out for weeks. The salt air washed the noise away.
In September of 1910, Karno's company sailed for the first of 2 American tours. Chaplin left his London flat at the top floor of 15 Glenshaw Mansions on Brixton Road, the first home he ever called his own, and shared with his brother Sidney. Chaplin described it as a cherished haven. A short walk southwest from the Fun Factory, 15 Glenshaw Mansions still stands today. It has an English Heritage blue plaque. It was not a workhouse bunk, nor theatrical digs, or his father's floor. He had found it at age 19, an entire childhood spent without a permanent home. He left a note for Sydney on the table because he disliked goodbyes, and at age 21, he left home.
I found a hat that was a size too small, and a cane made of thin willow. The world got big while I stayed small. Why speak when the eyes do the heavy work?
So here is what a 2-mile radius of South London had produced by the time that ship sailed, carrying Charlie Chaplin to America. A man who had been stripped, processed, and classified by an institutional system designed to communicate permanent failure, and who had watched, from the inside of it, exactly how attention and dignity actually work, who had conducted a childhood education in crowd mechanics at the Canterbury Music Hall on Westminster Bridge Road, who had learned the systematic grammar of silence in a rehearsal rule in Camberwell. The South London material was complete. The only thing missing? A camera. 6 months into his second American tour in May 1913, a representative from the New York Motion Picture Company made contact with the Karno tour manager in Philadelphia. He was looking for someone who could replace a departing star at their Keystone Studios in Los Angeles, California. Chaplin signed with Keystone in September 1913, arriving in Los Angeles in December, and he began working at the studio on the 5th of January 1914. The character that was about to make Charlie Chaplin the most recognizable person on Earth was not invented in California. It was assembled from everything that had already happened to him: the workhouse, the pantomime cat costume, the drunk in the theatre box. The tramp is a South London kid in borrowed clothes. Act 3, America, the Tramp, and the Exit, 1914 to 1952. It was at Keystone Studios in 1914 that Chaplin debuted the Tramp. The costume was an impromptu assembly of baggy pants, tight coat, small hat, large shoes, a cane, and a toothbrush mustache from the wardrobe room. He had no idea of the character, yet the moment he was dressed, the clothes made him feel the person he was. By 1915, the most recognizable face on the planet. His image was on more surfaces in more countries in more languages than any political leader or head of state. There is no precedent for what happened to Chaplin's fame in that period. The Tramp worked for reasons that are easy to feel, yet hard to explain. He's poor, but carries himself with dignity. He's defeated by circumstance, but not by character. He falls, he gets up, he tips his hat, he walks away. Not with naivety, but with the specific resilience of someone who has weighed the options and concludes that resilience is the only rational one available. The poverty the Tramp carries is real poverty, rendered without sentimentality. It's why it still connects with us now. Modern Times in 1936 was Chaplin's last Tramp film. The Great Dictator in 1940, his first true sound film, was a full-length caricature of Adolf Hitler at a time when America had not yet entered the war. The movie ended with a direct address to camera, that fascism is a choice, that cruelty is policy, that choosing otherwise is still possible. One of the most politically courageous films ever made in Hollywood. By the time Chaplin boarded the Queen Elizabeth ocean liner in September 1952, he had spent 3 years making the movie Limelight. This was a movie set in the 1914 London Music Hall world about an aging comedian watching his audience leave him. He was 63 years old. His American audience had largely left him. The film and the life had become at that point difficult to tell apart. His re-entry permit was revoked while he was at sea. He never went back to America. Act 4, Exile, the Oscar, and the Knighthood, 1952 to 1977. While Chaplin was in England for the Limelight premiere, His wife Una flew back to America alone. She went into their house in Beverly Hills, into the studio on La Brea Avenue, transferred his assets to European bank accounts, and closed everything up. Then she flew back. His La Brea studio? Musicians Herb Albert and Jerry Moss bought the La Brea studios off of Chaplin and used it to found A&M Records. In January 1953, the Chaplin family settled at the Manoir de Barn, a 19th century estate in Croisier-sur-Vevey on the north shore of Lake Geneva. Chaplin's formal rehabilitation began in April 1972. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences invited Chaplin to accept an honorary Oscar. He was hesitant. He'd not been in America for 20 years. It was Una who encouraged him to go. He accepted. He received a standing ovation that lasted 12 minutes, the longest in the ceremony's history. Chaplin wept on stage. He was 82 years old. Recognition in Britain took 3 more years. On March 4, 1975, aged 85, Charles Spencer Chaplin was finally knighted at Buckingham Palace. Una and several of his children were there. The honor had been delayed for decades, while others, like Laurence Olivier, were recognized. Charlie Chaplin died on Christmas Day, 1977, aged 88, at his home by Lake Geneva. He had come from disputed origins in Walworth and ended as a knight, father of 8, and recipient of the longest standing ovation in Academy Awards history. 2 months later, his coffin was stolen and held for ransom. Una refused to pay. It was recovered 11 weeks later and reburied under concrete. Act 5, The Lambeth Walk, the film's look back. Our walk will end at Lambeth Walk and the Charlie Chaplin mosaics at Chandler Hall. The street now displays the artists they made. Lambeth Walk was a working-class thoroughfare and an evening promenade. It was immortalized in the 1937 musical Me and My Girl. It ignited a dance craze I can remember my parents' friends still doing at their house parties in the early 1970s. You can watch Tony Award-winning actor Robert Lindsay evoke Chaplin's spirit wonderfully in his Lambeth Walk scene from the Broadway adaptation. It's on YouTube. I'll link to it in the show notes. So really, this is the whole point of the walk. Not that Chaplin happened to be born in South London, but that South London remained legible in his art. His films are not detachable from the streets. They are the streets, just reorganized. That leading man decision? Not really a choice given that moving pictures were in a very early experimental stage. Short films shot quickly with no script. They just made it up as they went along. Slapstick comedy is a natural fit for such improvisation. So, Charlie Chaplin's decision to emerge as the tramp versus romantic lead? It wasn't so much of a choice, but a directive born out of his background and the state of the art of motion picture making at the time. Music hall itself grew from 1830s pub back rooms, where landlords realized that performances kept their customers drinking. The songs reflected the struggles, humor, and politics of everyday life. It wasn't escapism, it was recognition. Pub back rooms and music halls also offered rare independence for working-class women. Performers like Hannah Chaplin built their careers there. The music halls promoted countercultural values of ribaldry, bawdiness, hedonism, the mockery of authority, and the equality of the sexes in work, leisure, and desire. All of it lives in the character of the tramp. He is poor, but will not be diminished by it. He falls, gets up, tips his hat, walks away. He mocks authority by surviving it. He has dignity without money. which is the one thing the workhouse was specifically designed to make impossible, a universal character born from local culture. The pub creates the music hall creates Chaplin. Chaplin removes language, and in the process creates a global art form. It all begins in a pub back room and the streets of Lambeth, South London. I'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode with more pubs, another neighbourhood, and more overlooked pieces of London. In the meantime, share this episode with someone who you think would enjoy it. Thank you for listening. This has been Expat Andy from Publicity, the Guidebook Gap.